A version control system, VCS, is a tool that helps software developers manage changes to their code over time. Some popular version control systems include Git, Mercurial, and Subversion. A version control system provides a way for developers to work on the same codebase simultaneously, without interfering with each other's changes, and to keep a record of all the changes that have been made. This allows developers to roll back to earlier versions of the code if necessary, and to easily see who made specific changes and when they were made. Additionally, it allows for easy management of different versions of the code, such as different branches for development, production and release, making it easier to test and deploy new features. There are two main types of version control systems: centralized and distributed. Centralized version control systems, CVCS, use a central server to store all versions of a codebase. Developers check out a copy of the code from the central server, make changes, and then check the code back in. Centralized version control systems have the following advantages. May be simpler to use and understand, especially for beginners. Good for small teams or projects. A central point of control makes it easy to manage access to the codebase. Centralized version control systems have the following disadvantages. Limited scalability. As the number of developers or the size of the codebase increases, the central server can become a bottleneck. Limited flexibility. Because all developers are dependent on the central server, it can be difficult to work offline or in disconnected environments. Single point of failure. If the central server goes down, all development comes to a standstill. Examples of centralized version control systems include Subversion and Perforce. Distributed version control systems, DVCS, do not rely on a central server. Instead, each developer has a complete copy of the code and its history on their own machine. Changes are made locally and then synced with other developers through a process called commit and push. Distributed version control systems have the following advantages. Good for large, distributed teams. No single point of failure. High availability and offline work possible. Efficient branching and merging. Greater flexibility and control. Distributed version control systems have the following disadvantages. Can be challenging for beginners to understand how to use it effectively. Examples of distributed version control systems include Git, Mercurial and Darks. Another categorization is based on the access level, open source and proprietary. Open source VCS are free to use and modify. They are usually community-driven, meaning that they are maintained and developed by a group of volunteers. Examples of open source VCS include Git, Mercurial, and Subversion. Proprietary VCS are controlled by a single company and are usually not free to use. Examples of proprietary VCS include Perforce and Microsoft Team Foundation Server, TFS. Before version control systems, VCS, were created, software programmers had to rely on manual methods to manage and track changes to their code. These methods were often time-consuming, error-prone, and made it difficult to collaborate with other developers. Some common methods that were used include keeping multiple copies of the code with different file names, using manual naming conventions to keep track of different versions of the code, using backup tapes or floppy disks to save copies of the code at different points in time, sending code files via email for other developers to review and make changes. These methods made it difficult to track and merge changes, and it was hard to revert to an earlier version of the code if necessary. Additionally, it was challenging to collaborate with other developers, making it hard to work on the same codebase simultaneously without interfering with each other's changes. With the advent of VCS, developers can now track changes to their code over time, collaborate with others, and revert to earlier versions of their code if necessary. This has greatly improved the efficiency and collaboration of software development.